Hi, Kevin here. Today we're fixing a rustic loaf of beer bread. Now, I made the same bread yesterday. Let me show you what it looks like. Here it is. Zoom in. So the bread has a crackling crisp crust, especially right after you bring it out of the oven. And it has a moist and rather tight crumb. And it has a distinct aroma of whatever kind of beer you put in the mix. And it has very few ingredients. It's really easy to make. So let me move this out of the way and then we'll make a fresh new loaf of beer bread. This is my very own recipe. So I did measure and weigh the ingredients. So what I have here is 4 cups of scooped and leveled bread flour, and by weight that is 555 grams. And to the bread flour I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of instant yeast. Instant yeast does not have to be dissolved in liquid. You just add it to the dry ingredients. And then I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of salt. That's 12 grams of salt. And no, the salt will neither retard nor kill the yeast. That is a myth. Okay, and then I'm going to add 12 ounces or 341 ml of room temperature beer. And this is pale ale, but again, use whatever you like, or whatever beer you like, or happen to have on hand. I'm not a beer drinker. I bought this for some other recipe. I don't even remember what that recipe was. Trying to get it open here. There we go. Okay, first I'm going to mix the yeast and the salt into the flour. Yeah, I did this just as an experiment yesterday, and I did write down all of the ingredients and the measurements just in case the bread turned out well, and happily the bread did turn out very well indeed. So now I'm going to add the beer, and of course it's going to foam up. And then I'm going to quickly add 1 tablespoon of good quality olive oil. This is extra virgin olive oil. And then you stir everything together. Now, I did look at other recipes for beer bread, and most of them were made not with yeast, but with baking powder. And they had a lot of sugar. You bake them in a loaf pan, and those breads were not, in my opinion, breads at all. They were cakes. Very sweet. The crust came detached when the baker tried to cut a slice. So I decided I would just do my own recipe. All right, we'll grab a knife. Scrape off my spatula here. Okay, now I'm going to dump the dough onto my non-floured work surface, which is a marble board. And you can buy a marble board like this in any kitchen supply store, or you can buy it on Amazon. Okay, now I am going to knead this by hand, and you do not want to add any additional flour. So you just have to be patient here. First gather all of the dough together. You have to be patient and you have to be gentle. Move this down a little more so you can see. Now, when you knead dough, what you do is just fold the dough over on itself and then stretch it out by pushing with the heel of your hand. Fold the dough over, push, and then you turn the dough. Give the dough a quarter turn with every manipulation. Just like this. And you do it gently at first so that the dough doesn't stick to your hand. And again, do not flour the work surface. Do not add any more flour to the dough, or you will end up with too much flour. And just in the beginning, don't push too hard with the heel of your hand. Otherwise, you'll break into the dough and it will become really sticky. Okay, and this part of a video always makes me a little nervous because kneading bread by hand does take time, and I'm always afraid people will just turn off the video, not watch to the end. So what I'm going to do is continue kneading the dough for 10 minutes, and when that gets done, I'll come back. Well, I'm back already because I wanted to tell you that if the dough becomes sticky, don't be tempted to add flour. Just do your best to keep kneading it, and again, don't push too hard. And then, as I've shown in other bread recipes where I've hand kneaded the dough, what you can do is just slam the dough in onto your work surface like this. Do that, 25, 50, even 100 times. And as you do that, you will be kneading the dough. It won't stick. And then you'll be able to continue just kneading it the usual way by hand. Okay, we'll come back when the dough is ready. All right, I've been kneading the dough for about 5 minutes, and it has become much less sticky. And again, I have not added any flour at all. I wanted to tell you that I'm one of those people who just really enjoys kneading dough by hand. Loved it since I was a little kid, because my mother, as I mentioned in another bread video, worked at a wheat lab before she met my father, and of course they did a lot of bread making and baking at the wheat lab, and my mother became a real expert at bread baking, and she passed that skill on to me. Yeah, I find the kneading process is really therapeutic. Well, it's a Zen-like thing. I find I do my best thinking while I'm kneading dough. I come up with a lot of solutions to the world's problems while I'm kneading dough. Unfortunately, I forget all of those solutions as soon as I've finished the project, but that's besides the point. It's also great exercise. I know one viewer made my basic white bread last week, and she left a comment saying that she thought her arm was going to fall off after kneading that dough, but she also said it was the best bread she'd ever tasted. So I was delighted to read her comment. And of course, I do love hearing from you guys. Sometimes I don't know if anyone's even watching the videos. So when people comment, I know that people are engaged, and it just makes me really happy. I'm so glad to have you guys in my world. Okay, look at this dough. It's not sticking at all. And that's because I was very patient in my kneading. If you try to knead bread hurriedly, it just won't work out. The bread will taste like your anxiety. But if you're patient, the bread will smell saintly. It will have a saintly taste and a saintly aroma. Whatever a saintly aroma is. And of course, if you absolutely despise the taste and smell of beer, you probably should not make this bread at all. Make one of my other bread recipes instead. Look at this. It's just gorgeous. All right, I'm going to knead this for just a few more minutes and then I'll come back. All right, we're about finished here. Wanted to show you how smooth this dough is now. Look at that. It's a very beautiful dough. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is just set this here for a moment. I'm going to cover it with a flour sack towel, and then I'm going to quickly wash out and dry the mixing bowl. Be right back. All right, I've washed and dried the bowl, and I've just added a tiny amount of olive oil to the bowl, and then I'm just going to brush it around to grease the bottom and sides of the bowl. And then here's the dough. Now I have formed the dough into a ball, just a rough ball. You can pinch the bottom if you like to pinch things. And then put the dough into the bowl and then flip it so the seam side is on the bottom. Rub some of that oil over the dough. And that's just to keep the dough from forming a film. And then cover the dough with cling film or a barely damp towel. And then put this in some warm location. I'm going to put this in my proofing oven. If your house is really cold, you could put this on a heating pad. And you want to let the dough rest until it doubles in volume. That's going to take 90 minutes to 2 hours, so we'll come back. All right, the dough has definitely doubled in volume. That took about 90 minutes. So now I'm going to dump the dough. Just getting you adjusted here. I'm going to dump the dough onto my board. And then you want to pat the dough out to deflate it and to remove air bubbles. And then form it into a tight ball. Now, I'm going to be baking the dough in a Dutch oven, so I'm going to be putting this dough in a smallish bowl. Let's see. Now, let me back up a moment. So when you're making the ball, just take the ends of the dough and tuck them under so you create surface tension on the top of the dough. And then pinch the seam to seal it. Yeah. Now let me show you what I'm going to be baking this dough. And it's my Dutch oven right here. This is enameled cast iron. You could bake this in a loaf pan if you wish. And now I'm going to transfer the dough to this bowl, which just fits inside of this Dutch oven. In other words, I'm going to be pouring the dough into the Dutch oven. Well, you'll see. Okay. So it goes into the bowl, and then I'm going to flip it so the top side is up. And I did grease this bowl. Now, sprinkle some flour over the top of the dough. This way, when you pour the dough into the Dutch oven, it won't stick to the bottom. Okay, and then cover the bowl with either cling film, just loosely cover it, or I like to use one of my little flour sack towels here. Okay, and then put this back in a warm spot until the dough pretty much doubles in volume. That's going to take 30 to 45 minutes. Also, put the Dutch oven with its lid on in the oven and preheat the oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. And you want the rack on the lower third level so that the top of the pot is pretty much at the center level of the oven. All right, the dough has doubled in volume. So now I have to fetch my Dutch oven. And this thing is ripping hot. It's been preheating for 30 minutes in the 450 degree oven. And now, have you ever seen such ratty looking pot holders? All right, now I'm going to add just a little more flour to the top of this because I don't want it to stick to the pot. Now, flip the dough into the pot and then add a little more flour. And then, remembering the lid is super hot, replace the lid, and then this goes into the 450 degree oven for exactly 30 minutes. And when that time is up, we'll come back. All right, here comes the bread. So that was 30 minutes at 450 degrees. Oh, look at this. It is gorgeous. Let me zoom in. Okay, so where we have the seam in the bread, it has split, and that's exactly what you want. Now, the bread looks like it's done, but you really want it to brown a little more. So lower the oven temperature to 400 degrees and then return the pot to the oven with the lid off for 10 to 15 minutes. All right, here's the bread after 15 minutes at 400 degrees with the lid off the pot. And now I want to transfer it to a wire rack. So I'm just using a flat spatula here. Put it on a rack. And then let me give you a close-up. Okay, this is one beautiful looking loaf of beer bread. So yeah, you can see where I had pinched that seam and it split. So I think this is very attractive. Right, now, unfortunately, we have to let the bread cool completely before slicing into it. Actually, while this is cooling, I have the other loaf that I made yesterday. so we can have a taste of this. All right, so this bread would be wonderful when slathered with butter, but I'm putting some camembert cheese on my bread. Oh, this is really wonderful. Well, this is one awesome loaf of beer bread. Now, the beer gives the bread a deep fermented taste and aroma, and because we baked it in the Dutch oven, it has a super crispy crust, and it has a chewy texture because we use bread flour instead of all-purpose flour. So I hope you will give this bread a try, and if you'd like to see my other bread recipes, just go to my YouTube page, click on playlists, and under playlists you'll see a category that says breads, and you'll see all of my bread recipes there. All right, thank you so much for watching. Please give this bread a try, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.